Every voice matters. BlueLift is a podcast dedicated to address the issues that affect all of us, with engaging discussions with progressive thought leaders and experts as guests. Here's your host, Peggy Kingsbury.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of BlueLift. I'm so glad you've decided to spend a little time with us today. And just remember, before I forget, if you really are enjoying what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe to the show and like it and share it with your friends. If you know of an interesting guest I need to have, or if you are that interesting guest, shoot us an email, which there'll be a link in the show notes, and we'd be more than happy to have you as a guest. Today, I'm really excited. I have my friend and an expert in many areas with us. The Reverend Heath McClure is with us, and we'll just call him Heath because Heath McClure is kind of a lot to say. Heath is currently an assisting priest at Luminous, which is a congregation in Williamson County, Tennessee. He's the founder of the St. Francis Mission, which he says is a ragtag communion of sinners, saints, believers, and skeptics, imagining a more inclusive and holistic way of practicing faith. And after you hear Heath talk, you will hear that he is absolutely doing that, definitely. Heath was ordained as a priest in 2017, and he's been part of the Diocese of St. Patrick in the Anglican Free Fellowship of America. One of his lifelong heroes is Fred Rogers, God rest his soul. And Heath is often found daydreaming of a day when every neighborhood is one of acceptance, love, and peace. Heath is convinced that Jesus came to bring this about on earth as it is in heaven. And wouldn't that be wonderful if we had a world of acceptance, love, and peace? Welcome to the podcast, Heath.
Well, thank you, Peggy. It's good to be here.
Heath also, you'll be able to tell by his amazingly good voice, records audible books for folks. So if you've got a book you've written and you want somebody to read it with this great voice of his, just let him know.
Absolutely.
Heath, I want to start kind of with a very basic question. I love to ask people how they got to where they are today. When did you know that you were going to have a career around faith?
Oh, wow. I don't know that I've ever been asked that before. For me, I was raised in large part, I was raised by my mom and my stepdad and my grandparents. My grandfather is actually, God willing, turning 100 years old next month.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he was a bivocational pastor for all of my young life up until his retirement and beyond. And he always took the time to tell me the stories of Jesus. And so I was, good heavens, I think I got my first three-piece suit on Easter Sunday when I was 7 or 8 years old. And he always showed me in action that loving everyone was the most important thing at the same time. He was always open. There were times I would walk into elevators and there would be big burly construction workers, and within 2 minutes, my grandfather was leading them in the sinner's prayer. And so he's still my hero to this day. But I remember at a very young age wanting to preach. I think I preached my first sermon when I was 16 years old.
Oh, my.
And I know, and it's been going ever since. And so there were years where I took time off from it and questioned it. And as you move more into an Anglican ethos, you have to take time for discernment and preparation and such. And I did that. But it's been from childhood. How about that?
So was there an Anglican church in your area when you were growing up, or is this something you discovered later on?
No, ma'am. I was brought up in Independent Fundamentalist Baptist, and later on, when Shannon and I got married, we became Presbyterians, and I kind of had a faith crisis during that time, and I was looking for more. I was looking for mystery and for beauty and for sacred rhythms, and I discovered this little church in town and took my 3-year-old daughter at the time. She's almost 25 now, and we went to this Anglican church service in midweek. And I remember later on her saying, "Dad, can we go back to that beautiful church?"
Oh.
And so really I was drawn into the beauty, mystery, and the sacred rhythms of it all.
Wow. That's very interesting. I know that one of the things that I think that is a kind of supposed to be a common thread throughout religion, and I do want to give a trigger warning for my listeners. If talking about religion is hard for you and religious trauma and all of that,
Yeah.
either listen knowing it's going to be hard or move along, because I don't want to cause anybody any undue pain. But I think one of the common threads that is supposed to be woven through faith and religion is that we are to lay our lives down for others.
That's it.
And in this current atmosphere, what are we supposed to do? How do we lay our lives down for others? And I guess stay out of jail.
Well, you just hit on one of my favorite themes, the New Testament. And the Greek word for it is kenosis, and it's found in Paul's letter to the Philippians. And everyone knows this who's ever been to church, where Paul says, "Have this mind in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, didn't consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he emptied himself." And that's the word kenosis, taking the form of a servant. Of course he did, because he had taught us, he who would be great among you must be the servant of all. And so our lives are meant to be a pouring out with and for each other. Our power is supposed to be a power for and with each other. It's very strange to watch people who call themselves Christians celebrating this power over, I'm going to call it this power over and power for myself instead of power with and for others. How do we how do we keep from going to jail? Well, for me, I'll tell you, it's recognizing that there really are no political solutions. Right before I sat down with you, I had lunch with a friend, and he was asking me something similar, and he was wanting to confront someone about some particular political philosophy or whatever. And I said, look, I said, I am no match for hours and hours and hours of propaganda that people subject themselves to. I am no match for news networks that call themselves entertainment networks, but then purport to tell the news, saying the same things over and over and over again. And people tune in for hours, Peggy. And then they get in their cars and they turn on talk radio. And they have these talking heads who are always angry and always sick and always disgusted and always talking about division and suspicion. And this goes on and on and on. And I know some people, they do this hours a day. And so I told my friend, I said, look, I'm no match for that, because that takes on a power of its own. It becomes normal. And so the best I can do is to offer a little bitty pebble in a shoe. You know, you ever had a pebble in your shoe where you're walking and all of a sudden you notice it, but you're like, I want to deal with it. I'm going to live with this for a while. and then after a while, it starts to make you angry. And then after a while, you really have to sit down and you have to deal with it. And you have to pull it out so that you can walk normally again. Well, the pebble that I can offer to give to people to put in their shoes probably is going to come from the mouth of Jesus himself. I mean, in this climate today, we need his reconciling teachings more than we ever have. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty. You gave me something to drink. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And then his great crescendo, whatever you do to the very least of these, that's what you are doing to me. And so, sometimes I just look at folks and say, I see that really, really differently. When Jesus said I was a stranger and you invited me in, that's really profound and compelling to me. And I might leave it at that. Because if I engage in that power game, that incendiary game where we're just having a food fight across the table with each other, then I'm playing by their rules. Their rules are shock and awe. And I don't want to do shock and awe. I want to do love and service and reconciliation and honor the space that exists between human beings. I was talking to another friend this week, and we were having similar conversations. And I looked at this person and I said, okay, we were on FaceTime, and I said, see this space between us? This is the secret place where the Most High dwells. And we have got to protect this space between us at all costs, because it's the only thing that really counts and that really matters, is how we see each other, how we engage with one another, and how we see the world.
It's and I appreciate that you're sharing that one-on-one conversations are still so important and necessary for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I'm, in the current atmosphere that we're all living in, I just call it a hellscape.
It is.
All of us assume that we know things about other people based on what we see outwardly. And I see that as such a bigger problem than it used to be, because, and I've shared this before, but if I see someone with a "Don't Tread on Me" tag on their car, I mean, I just immediately think I know something about them. And I probably know a few things about them, but I don't know everything about them. But we are so sorted, SORTED. Some of us are SORDID. But we're so sorted these days, and we just are putting these big silos around ourselves, and we are, it's the old proverbial echo chamber. And I think what's most hurtful for people of faith is that so much of this is coming from the pulpit. As a pastor, are you seeing people come to faith to feel better about things, or moving away from faith?
That is such a powder keg question. First of all, I want to have some solidarity with you. I too struggle with license tags, and I used to love hats. I really don't like them anymore. I see those license tags, and I say a phrase in my head, and I say, no, don't tread on them. Don't tread on them. Don't tread on the weak. Don't tread on the hungry. Don't tread on the marginalized. I mean, let's bring Isaiah into this. Is the plunder of the poor in our houses? Let's bring Jesus in this. Are we honoring the stranger? What am I seeing? I am seeing a lot of very precious people having no choice but to leave evangelical Christianity for their own mental health and for their own lives. And I say, God bless them if they have to do that. The LGBTQ community, in large part, I mean, there are a lot of LGBTQ Christians, and I celebrate that, but there's a lot of those precious siblings of ours who have had to find their way out, because we've said all are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome. And then they get a little bit deep into the church and find there's a hook in that.
Right.
And so they've sought refuge elsewhere and created beautiful, vibrant communities. That's what's happening. I see a lot of different folks in different communities finding other ways to create vibrant community with one another. And I think God celebrates that. I think wherever there's restoration and healing and reconciliation and true solidarity and kindness and compassion, God celebrates that. That's what we're here for. We're here for that kind of thing, that kind of healing. I am so hopelessly smitten, though, Peggy, with the church and with what it can be. I'm smitten with the sacraments. When we come up for Holy Communion, and I got to serve communion on Easter Sunday. When we come up for Holy Communion, we are, to use Paul's language, we are discerning the body of Christ. Do you want to see the glory of God? Look at your neighbor. Behold the glory of God. Do you want to see the face of Christ? Look at your brother or your sister. Here we are. I'm preaching in a few weeks, God willing, on May 18th, on Jesus saying, a new commandment I give to you, and it's love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Good grief. There it is. All we have to do is open our eyes and see this beautiful, very brief world that he has given us as a gift, and see his glory and see his imprint, his image everywhere, and live accordingly. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. To see each other, to know each other, to love each other. You know, it's it's very simple, but as it turns out, not very easy.
Well, it's not
So here we are.
it's not easy, and I sometimes look at that commandment and I struggle with it these days, because as a Christian am going to say to others, or going to say, we're supposed to love others. You're supposed to love this person who's come to our country for a better life. You're supposed to love this person who's struggling, etc.
That's right.
Then I know the
That's right.
same commandment applies to me, and I'm also supposed to love the person who doesn't love those people.
Yeah.
That's really hard. It's really hard.
It really is. And so this lunch I just had, we talked about this very thing. So, number one, I'm angry that people subject themselves to harmful propaganda. I'm angry that a lot of men spend more time listening to the radio than talking to their family. That makes me angry. And at the same time, if I'm in my right mind, and every now and then I look at that with sadness, and I have compassion, and I go, man, what else would they do but put a "don't tread on me" on their car after hearing all of these horrible things that the radical left is going to do? I was coming home a couple of days ago. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and there's this new great country station. I won't mention it, but it plays all the oldies, and it played a song I didn't like, and so I flipped it over by one, and talk radio was on, and it brought me back. And I was listening to this man talking, and this caller he was talking to was suggesting that the Republicans need to start jailing Democrats and jailing liberals for all this stuff. And you could tell that this host was trying to mitigate this. And he said, hey, no, we've got to follow the law. And I'm thinking, well, we have an administration and we have a whole machinery of propaganda. I'm going to keep using that word because that's what it is. A whole machinery of propaganda that has been undermining the law over and over and over again. So this person is just doing this person is just doing the bidding of someone else.
Right.
Because they're promised a bunch of things. And this host was trying to find a way to say, no, we can't do that. We have to follow the law. We can't jail our political opponents. And then he went into the crescendo I was expecting. He said, because if we do it, the radical left will do it in spades, and they'll put everybody in jail and all this stuff. And I reminded my friend, I said, do you remember back when Obama was president? I was listening to talk radio at that time, and there was a certain person who's still on the radio who was convincing everyone that Barack Obama was going to institute Sharia law. And every woman was going to have to dress a certain way. And he got to do this for 8 years. And then and of course, none of it was true. None of it was true.
Right.
We didn't ban guns. We didn't close churches. All this stuff, and Sharia law was probably never even thought of. But this commentator got to flip over, get a total pass for all of those lies for 8 years, and start a brand new set of lies. If we subject ourselves to that kind of toxic propaganda, it harms us, but it forms us. It just does. It forms us into certain kinds of people that we almost can't help but be. And my compassionate self looks at that as a kind of a possession. It's a kind of a bewitching. And I'm to see, like you suggested, the image of God exists all the way from the president on down, and I've got to see the image of God there. And if I look, I can find it. And that has to be my starting place if I'm going to have any kind of sanity in this current climate.
I agree, and I sometimes do say to myself, if I feel like I can insist that Christians are supposed to love others, then I have to do that as well. And so I have a long list of people whom I'm finding it very difficult to love these these days. I know one of the things I read or either heard you say when I was doing research for this is that things changed for you in 2017. Tell me about
Yeah.
2017 and what
So,
changed.
I was a teacher for a long time, and I worked with incredible people, great students, parents, families. It was great. Enjoyed it for a long time. 2017 was the Republican primary, and it was when our current president was just dipping his toe in things. And most people that I knew at the time were like, "Heck no, we're not going to do this." And so this never, I'm not going to say his name, but it was the never his name movement
Yes.
that went on, and I was a part of that. And of course, I meant it. And he gets the nomination, and I absolutely was very conservative at the time, but absolutely would not. I voted third party that year because I just simply could not. I meant what I said. This is insanity. But after he won and he was inaugurated, and I even told my wife, I said, "We're going to give this guy a chance. Everyone deserves a chance. It's got to be okay." And with it, it only took about 18 months to where I was like, "Well, I wouldn't call myself a card carrying Democrat, but until this guy's out of office, that's how I'm voting." Just as a protest to this kind of barrage of hatefulness is what it is.
Right.
Well, in the schools, the conversation started to change because this man s- started curating a whole new way for us to relate to each other. And the talking heads on certain networks and on the radio played into that, and people listened to that, and people got angrier quicker. COVID hits in 2020, and all of a sudden, it's like we're choosing football teams and we're saying horrible things about people based on what kind of protocols they want to use to be safe or not during COVID. And I knew at that time, and it was shaking inside of my cells and atoms, that I needed a different context because I could not sustain those kinds of conversations because this had never been this way before. Used to, you had your Democrats, you had your Republicans, your independents. When the Democrats won, the Republicans ribbed the Democrats, and the Democrats ribbed the Republicans, and we had jokes. And then we went to Taco Bell, and then we laughed, and then we got on with our lives, and it wasn't a thing. That's how I grew up. We may have serious disagreements, but it wasn't these people are trying to fill in the blank. But with this current administration, all of us and with this personality, all of this changed, and everything's a fight to the death. Everything is a these people want to X, Y, and Z, and I was that. I was a hardcore fundamentalist conservative Republican. And one day I went, we've been told all of these things are going to happen for 50 years, and they never ever do. I think I smell a rat, you know, and and I mean, you think about, oh, they want to jail our political opponents. Look, even with Trump's impeachments, the law was followed, he was acquitted, and we got on with our lives. With the FBI investigations, he was indicted. All of these things happened. We're following the law. They were dismissed. We get on with our lives. We respect the rule of law, right? No, we're not going to let certain things go, but hopefully we all honor the Constitution enough and our own Christian sensibilities enough to have respect for each other and to follow the laws of our land. That's what I want to see.
Well,
And so, yeah, in 2000.
I hope you're right. I mean, I think that there probably was a time, and you probably lived through this time when being the principal of a Christian school, for example, which I guess is what you were, was not a political thing. It was just
No.
being in charge of a school, right? That was based on faith. And
That's
there
right.
were probably parents on both sides of the political aisle who had their children there.
Yes.
And the common thread
right.
was, I want to send my child to a Christian school. But then all of a sudden, I think that, I don't know this for sure about the school you used to be at, but my hunch is there are probably zero Democratic parents involved anymore.
I doubt there are Democratic parents involved in many around here. And you know what? I could be wrong. And if I am, I'm happy to be corrected about that. Things are very monolithic now. And that's the problem.
Right.
Of course, this is a bigger question too. Anytime the church is allied with empire, we get into trouble. Anytime, I mean, you think about it. I was reading a commentary on the book of Acts this week, and think about Jesus and the apostles and Paul. These folks did not get into this for power or for money or influence or proximity to the same at all. And yet that has become the Christian clarion call in our day. We want proximity to power. And by power, I mean power over. Power to show those, fill in the blanks, whatever, be it immigrants, be it the radical left. And I'll be honest with you, most of my friends these days are very progressive. I've yet to meet the radical left. I would, if you could introduce me sometime, that would be wonderful, just to meet this radical left that everyone talks about. Yeah. I meet people who want us to take care of each other. I mean, look, it's said all the time. The government shouldn't be doing welfare. Let's just take that one. Wonderful. What is your mechanism? I say to this person, what is your mechanism or your program to feed the hungry in mass? Because I'm listening. I think when I think of government, I think of that just means human beings getting together and deciding to do something. That's what government is. And so I have no problem with it. But if there's a better way to do it, that's not the government, show me what you're doing. Show me, well, the government shouldn't be involved in this or that. Great. What is the program going to be to take care of those who have fallen off the wagon, who are on the margins, who don't have enough to eat, who have nowhere to sleep, right?
Right.
I'm listening. I am open, and a lot of people are listening and are open. I fear that sometimes those things are said because we just want to get back to business as usual, and we don't want to be bothered with it. And I find that most people do have compassion, and I find that most people do genuinely care about other people. And so I think we're getting back to those, Paul talks about those powers and principalities and spiritual forces in the heavenly places that, however you want to define those things, I believe they're very real, that have kind of a hold on people. And, we want to see people set free. I want to be set free.
Right. Well, I see, definitely from a layperson's viewpoint, but I see the numbers and voicing of excuses just increasing rapidly. For example, the latest thing that I see all over social media is God uses imperfect men. And I believe that he does, but I also then say, that imperfect and that one, even though I have a past of being very involved in evangelical church, I struggled sometimes when I would hear from the pulpit things about politics. I bristled at that because I just didn't think that was the place for it. Those two things just didn't seem to mix up for me. But there are tons of excuses, and I wonder why the LGBTQ community has been such a lightning rod for Christians, and I know in your past you've suffered some because of your support for the LGBTQ community. Why do and this is just very much asked from a layperson's viewpoint. Why do Christians pick on gay folks? What's that about?
Oof. The first thing I'm going to say is if they would just have some genuine encounter and relationships with some of these precious siblings of ours, that would probably cure most of this. Peggy, we human beings love to scapegoat. We love to put all of our whatevers onto a scapegoat so that we can feel better about ourselves. That is a very close issue to me because it's not about an issue. It's about actual human beings in my life that I know. The Bible has been used as a weapon for a long time against these precious folks. I don't believe the Bible talks about loving same-sex relationships at all. I believe the Bible condemns gang rape. I believe the Bible condemns using catamites, which are young boys in the Greco-Roman world. You might have to edit this out, but as sex slaves, because that was going on. And you can read about this. Sarah Rudin wrote about this in her book, Paul Among the People. There are tons of resources for this. So the Bible definitely condemns all of that stuff where we are putting ourselves over other people. And so there's that. But I think in the main, we love to scapegoat what we don't know. And we are being fed things from the top about these folks that aren't true. And it's our lack of curiosity. Did you watch Ted Lasso? Did you guys watch
Yes.
Ted Lasso?
Oh, of course.
Oh,
Love
yeah.
Ted Lasso.
Yeah. Do you remember the dart scene where he says, "Be curious and not judgmental"?
Correct.
Right? We have a lack of curiosity. In the main, what I want to say is the church's vitriol against LGBTQ folks is irrational. It's irrational. If anyone takes the time to get to know these precious folks, hear their story, then I think all of that goes away. But let me turn this back on myself. I love to go to a certain pub down here in Franklin. It's a watering hole. It's a place where people meet. I've met a lot of great friends there and had a lot of political arguments there, which I don't do anymore because I make myself do something. I make myself be curious about somebody else. Because honestly, looking at me, I'm a white straight man with a big beard, and that means a lot of things to a lot of people. A lot of people assume how I think about things, and so something will be thrown out because someone's trying to have a relationship, someone's trying to have a conversation, which is a dignified thing to do. And they say something very Christian nationalist, if I can say that. And I say, I don't want to talk about politics at all, but I would love to know where you're from. And 99% of people, when you go there, say, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh." And then all of a sudden, this different conversation takes place where I actually get to know that person. And it helps me see beyond the initial, I don't know what you want to call it, the initial shock of, "Oh, here's another MAGA person."
Right.
Well, it's not a MAGA person. It's a person made in God's image. And we're going to put that over here and we're going to find out who you are and you're going to find out who I am. And all of a sudden we're going to be better for it. And I'm not going to be Heath the progressive and you're not going to be Mike the MAGA guy. We're just going to be two human beings connecting. And so that really is the solution. That really is the solution for everything, is for us to put our weapons down and to actually be curious about each other's humanity and story. Because all of us are walking around carrying wounds, a painful story, tales of triumph, ideas about how we can make the world better, passions. We're all carrying that around. And if we would take the time to share that with each other and make that our lives, then we have on earth as it is in heaven.
Well, that's a good dream.
It is, and I
it,
have a lot of those.
and it is a good way to look at things. And I do think that as a country, we are at the point where we have to begin to look at other people with curiosity instead of conclusion, you know, and
Yes,
and
yes.
try to move us to a
And I
place.
struggle with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's so hard because there are certain lines that are drawn that I'm not crossing. I'm not, I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I'm not really that curious about a bigot or a racist. Don't care. Now, do I
Yeah.
understand that that probably came from something in their past life that caused that? Yeah. But all I know is those current actions are hurting people I care a lot about. And so I
Right.
want to lay my life down for the person who's being hurt, not the one who's doing the hurting. And that is about as human, I guess, as it gets, right?
Oh, I think you're right. And I have to interject. That's exactly what you need to focus on. And that person who's doing the hurting is also defacing their own humanity. They are
Right.
also hurting themselves, and you know that. But
Yes.
I have to bring that in for me because I'm constant. I never thought I could be surprised as much as we are surprised in 2025. You know, like I've pretty much had to give up the news because it's this
Yeah.
incendiary, unrelenting hammer to the head every single day. And that's what it's meant to be. And if I allow myself to play into that, then I'm playing by their rules because they're setting the rules. And I don't want to objectify them by saying that, but this is a game. This is a game. And when you have a president suggesting that he become the next pope, a game is being played. A game is being played. And the best thing that we can do is ignore that stuff.
Right.
That because that conversation goes on and the talking heads and everyone gets up in arms about it, and then policies are being passed that hurt other people. Free lunches for people who need them are being taken away.
Right.
Public education is being gutted. Can you imagine, Peggy? Can you imagine a United States of America that didn't have a public education system? Good grief.
Well, I mean, if they're able to get it done, I believe that's their goal. I think they want to privatize it all because I believe that the whole world spins by following the money. And,
Yeah.
that's sadly, that's what I think could happen. Privatizing some things works, but not most things. It's not working for prisons, for example, and it's not going to work for schools. It's
I
I think as a Christian, the hardest thing about a lot of this for me is that, and I'm just speaking for myself here, but I've talked with friends about this, and they feel some of the same things. The thing I have to work so hard in myself is to not let hatred begin to seep in, because when I
yes.
see God's children being hurt and that being mocked, they're being mocked and laughed about and hurt on purpose. It is hard for me not to hate the people who are doing that. And so as a Christian, that is a hard thing for my soul to deal with because I don't want to be that person who gets up every morning, reads the news, and has hate in my heart the rest of the day because of what I read. But I also don't want to be the person who never reads the news. I'm not into that sort of thing either. I admire people who can do that. God bless them. But I'm kind of a news junkie, and I like to keep up with things. And so I believe that some of that is what is seeping into the Christian world now and causing people not to go to church because they just don't want to have to deal with all of that. If they can stay away, they don't have to deal with all that right now.
Hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. I was talking to a friend this week, and this person and their spouse, they have 2 children, have decided that they just can't go right now. And they gave me 2 reasons. They said every time they go, LGBTQ people are mentioned derogatorily, and politics come up. And by politics, I mean partisan politics.
Yes.
I mean praising a certain president. Here's the thing, the gospel is political. I am very political. And my preaching, I want it to be political. It's not partisan. It's not partisan politics. But the gospel has political implications.
Right.
Right? I mean, the empire we are trying to found on earth as it is in heaven is a kingdom of peace. Jesus is the Prince of Peace, peace and love and reconciliation. And so many times people wave their hands and go, yeah, well, that's spiritual. No, that is Jesus' kingdom. That's why they put Jesus on a cross, because he challenged the empire and said he was the king and that Caesar wasn't king and Caesar wasn't to be obeyed, right? And so it's sometimes it's overwhelming, Peggy, which is why we have to focus on that little square in front of us that we have. This little square I have in front of me. I'm sitting in my den right now. This square of my family, the square of the people that I work with, the square of my congregation, the square of my community. We have to focus on being the best representatives of Jesus in those little squares. And that's probably the best we can do.
I love that. I love that. And that's a wonderful way for us to wrap up, is that we each have our square of influence, our square where we are. And right now, the best we can do is to be the best person within that square that we can possibly be, and to honor our faith for those of us who are faithful. And for those who aren't, I mean, I know a lot of people who say, well, they're not people of faith, but they're good and kind and decent people. And so they're struggling with the same thing. Well, I know that you have some pastoring to do this afternoon. And so we have to kind of wrap it up. I think I just want to close by reminding everyone that, for those who are people of faith, no matter what you're being taught, Jesus excludes no one. There's nothing in the Bible about him saying, you got to love everybody except this group over here.
That's right.
And
that's right.
And if we can remember that he excludes no one, we should learn to do that as well in our own lives, and to be curious. As you said, I love what you said about being curious about other people, because it does change when you hear their stories. Sometimes you can learn where they've been before they came to sitting across from you talking about some sort of topic. If people want to hear more from you, how can they do that, Heath?
Well, I'm not a big social media person, but you can go to Luminous Parish. I think we're changing over our website, but I think it's luminousparish.org now. I'll have to double check that, but search Luminous Anglican and you can hear my sermons. You can hear other sermons from folks there. You can reach out to me, Heath at luminousanglican.org. Happy to hear from anyone. But just get out there and love people.
And we'll put that in the show notes. And also, if you live in the Franklin area and you want to sit down and join Heath at the pub, can we name the place where people can find you?
Sure. So St. Francis Mission actually meets at McCreary's Irish Pub and Eatery, downtown Franklin, 5:30 on Sundays. And sometimes we have 5 people, sometimes we have 25 people. But it's just a place where we all get together and love on each other, and we have the Eucharist. And every now and then, we've been known to pour some pints. So we'll pour a pint. We'll pour a pint for you if you take a notion.
That's awesome. So if somebody wants to learn more about Heath and talk to him face to face and learn about his mission, then McCreary's Pub is the place to be. So thank you so much, Heath, for taking time out of, I know what's a very busy schedule. Thank you for being with us today. And I'd like to have you back as more topics come up that we need to discuss, because there were a couple of nuggets that you dropped that I would like to discuss further.
Sure.
So thank you for spending time with us today. And thank you, listeners. I hope you got something out of this. I believe that you did. If you didn't, well, that's okay too. But let me know. Send me an email. Ask some questions. If you got something I need to pass along to Heath that you're curious about, he'd be more than happy to talk with you. So everybody have a great day, and thanks for listening to Blue Lift.